On a quiet autumn night, Detective Grace Wheeler knocked on the front door of a modest, weather-beaten house tucked away on the outskirts of a small Pennsylvania town. She was there on a routine welfare check. A neighbor had reported that they hadn't seen the homeowner, Eric Bloom, in days. It was supposed to be ordinary. Quick. Simple. But that knock on the door would unravel a darkness that still hangs over the case to this day. When Eric didn't answer, Grace decided to let herself in. What greeted her was a stillness so eerie, it felt like the entire house was holding its breath. The lights were off, and the faint scent of mildew hung in the air. As she ventured deeper into the home, she found herself standing in the living room, and that's where she froze. Blood. It was smeared on the floor and streaked across the faded wallpaper. There was a trail of it leading down the hallway. But no sign of Eric. Her heart raced as she followed the trail, clutching her flashlight tightly. At the end of the hall was a small storage room with the door slightly ajar. Grace pushed it open and discovered the chilling truth. Eric was there, slumped on the floor. He wasn't alive. But this wasn't just a scene of violence. Taped to the walls were photographs, hundreds of them, each stranger than the last. At first, they looked like candid shots. People smiling, laughing, walking through parks or grocery stores. But then Grace noticed the disturbing detail: these people were oblivious to the camera. They had no idea they were being watched. It was clear they were being stalked. And it wasn't just Eric's blood smeared across those walls. Intermixed with the photos were cryptic notes scrawled in red ink, or maybe it was more blood, phrases like, "They know, and she's next." Grace's hands trembled as she scanned the macabre collage, trying to piece together the horrific puzzle. Eric Bloom, it appeared, had been stalking people for years. But something didn't add up. If Eric was the predator, why was he the victim now? The photos pointed toward an intricate web of surveillance, of obsession. Yet, the violent scene suggested Eric had crossed paths with someone equally, or perhaps, more dangerous. Investigators dove headfirst into uncovering Eric's reality. They pieced together what they could from his neighbors, who described Eric as withdrawn but seemingly harmless. No one suspected he was quietly cataloging the lives of strangers. When authorities seized his belongings, they found detailed journals. Eric had documented the routines of dozens of people, where they worked, what time they came home, who their friends were. But the most baffling discovery? A specific entry in his notes that kept everyone on edge: "She knocked today. She saw it. She knows." The entry was dated the day Detective Grace had first knocked on his door. Was Eric already aware something was closing in on him? Had he known his own end was near? The investigation uncovered another shocking layer when they examined the fingerprints found in the blood-smattered room. Mixed among Eric's prints were multiple others that didn't match anyone in their system. They didn't belong to Eric, nor did they belong to his victims. But what truly disturbed detectives was the absence of any forced entry into his house. Whoever had done this to Eric, they were likely invited inside. Was Eric targeted by someone he'd been stalking? Did one of his victims realize they were being hunted and decide to confront him? Or, and this is where investigators struggled the most, did Eric unknowingly stalk another predator? Someone who had been watching him just as intently as he watched others? As the days turned into weeks, the case stalled. None of Eric's known victims had alibis strong enough, but no evidence definitively connected them to his murder. Then, investigators stumbled upon surveillance footage taken from the property across the street from Eric's home. On the tape, just hours before Detective Grace knocked on his door, a blurry figure could be seen approaching the home's porch and knocking. One knock. This knock, chillingly similar to Grace's, wasn't followed by the standard wait. The unseen guest let themselves in immediately, vanishing into the shadows. What happened next is where the footage becomes more unsettling. Less than 15 minutes later, the figure emerges again, but this time, they're carrying what looks like a backpack. And despite the house being empty now, the footage shows the figure walking past Eric's windows, glancing in, as if ensuring their work was complete. They then disappear down the street. Investigators called this the second knock theory. It soon became clear Eric's death wasn't an act of passion or anger, it was cold, calculated, and premeditated. But who was this second visitor? Why were they carrying what appeared to be belongings out of the house? And why would they return just to observe their handiwork? To this day, these questions haunt everyone who worked on the case. Eric's voyeuristic spiral was horrifying in its own right, but no one could have predicted he would become prey himself. The knot Detective Grace made that night may have uncovered more than blood, it opened the door to a secret that remains unsolved. A chilling reminder that predators often lurk among predators.